Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 2 of Don't Feed Noob, the show where I teach you, the noob, how to be better at Dota 2, how to keep your opponents from raging at you, how to feel more gratified every time you play a game of Dota 2, how to practice properly, and also in a way blog some of my own experiences in playing the game, because I'm just sort of getting back into it after a long break. How long of a break? Well, last time I played it, I was booting up the Warcraft 3 client in 2009 or 2010, so it's been a while. So let's move into what today's video is going to be about. Now, today's video is going to have 3 sections. The first section is going to be actually based on someone's feedback from last week. I'm going to be talking about how to stay in lane and how to survive a lot of harassment. Basically, I'm going to be talking about a situation where you've got maybe the unfortunate case of 2 melees in a lane. I'm talking about a pub game where maybe it's single draft or you just nobody communicates, whatever. You've got maybe two melees in a lane versus 2 ranged, 1 melee run ranged versus 2 ranged, and those 2 ranged heroes, they aren't really getting last hits, they're just supports, whatever, and they're doing nothing but harass you. How do you stay in the lane? How do you keep from dying? How do you balance out keeping some of that gold and keeping all that experience without getting thrown out of the lane or someone screaming, "Don't feed noob," if you know what I mean? So that will be the first section. The second section of this video is going to be just a little spiel on roles, what each role does, what each role means, and what roles you might be interested in based on your skill level. Now, every role can be played by someone who's relatively new to the game, but the newer you are, generally there's certain roles that are easier to play well. They're not as fun, but they're much easier to play at a higher level than other roles, such as a carry. So that will be the second part of the video. The third section of this video, I'm actually going to go through all of the comments and messages I got about last week's video, and I'm going to just go through them one at a time and address feedback, comments, questions, concerns, everything that I got. So, yeah. So let's get into the first section. Alright guys, so this first section we're going to be talking about staying in lane and, more importantly, surviving harassment. So, in most games, for me, let's say I'm playing the Broodmother. So for me, it's a lot different because I'm a spider that lives in a web that makes me invisible. So I sort of have a built-in escape mechanism where all I have to do is just not attack anything, and I won't get hurt. However, let's say I'm against the Keeper of the Light. You know, let's say I'm in a situation where there's a good chance I will take damage. Now, with the Keeper of the Light, which is what my viewer from last week specifically asked about, Keeper of the Light is one of those situations, it's sort of rare, but, you know, in general this is a good rule for Dota, but in some situations you need to do this more than others, and that's keep your eyes open. And against Keeper of the Light, you need to keep your ears open, because you can hear, it sounds almost a little bit like the ocean, that sound when he's channeling his wave of light thing. I don't know the name of the skill offhand. I think it's called Blinding Light? I have no idea. But we all know what it does. It's the big AoE that travels forever and does more damage the longer he channels it. So you can hear him channeling it, and at that point in time, just get back. If you see him, you can get out of the way. If you can't see him but you can hear him, just get back. And you sort of just have to try to dodge that attack. And if he moves, ending it, and sends the wave at you early, and you don't get out of the way, then it won't do as much damage. So that's an example where in some cases you just have to get out of the way. In some cases you have to control. In the standard sense, let's say auto attacks. Well, you don't always actually have to be getting last hits. And before I get flamed for saying this, let's say you're an Omni Knight in the same lane as the Drow Ranger. Now, I'm going to talk about roles a lot more in the second section of this video, but the Omni Knight is a support. The Drow Ranger is a hard carry. Now, a carry is someone that is really powerful late game based on their items, and a support is someone that's somewhat strong early game and really good at keeping your team alive late game. So the Omni Knight is a melee, the Drow is the ranged, and let's say you're against 2 random ranged heroes, whatever. Whenever that Omni Knight goes in to try to get a last hit, he gets harassed. He gets harassed by the enemy heroes. He runs in, darts out. He can, if he's got perfect last hits, he always gets a last hit he goes for, then maybe he gets 2 last hits, and for every 2 or 3 last hits he gets, he has to burn a tango just to stay alive. Well, not... It's difficult to use Omni Knight as an example because he can heal himself, but let's just say you have to use a tango for every few last hits you get as a melee support. So that's expensive to the point where really your gain is very small from getting those last hits, and it's almost a risk at that point to go for those last hits. But the Omni Knight, a melee support, does not have to get those last hits. He just needs to stay in that area to make sure that he's getting experience, to make sure that he's there to protect the Drow if she needs it, and more importantly, make sure that Drow is getting her last hits so she can be more powerful to sort of run the whole board late game. So, I know that's a roundabout way of answering the question. I'm not done yet, but I just wanted to say in some scenarios, if you're not a carry and you're a melee, it's not important, unless you've got 2 supports in the same lane, then the support should get some last hits, because someone needs to get last hits. But if you've got a hard carry next to a support, that support doesn't really need last hits. That support can just sit on his ass and wait. So, that's one way of looking at it. If you're in the situation where you've got, like, let's say a ranged support, like, let's say you got Shadow Shaman or Dazzle, and you've got a melee carry like Ursa, which, by the way, Ursa's not really picked in pro games at all. Like, I have very rare. Just wanted to point that out, but he's very good in low-level games because if you can't get away from him, he's just going to kill you every single time. So, Ursa has to get those last hits because Ursa needs to get his Vladimir's Offering so he can go kill Roche. He needs to get fed. He's got to do a lot of stuff. So, that Ursa, he's put in a situation where he's going to take a couple of hits whenever he goes and gets it. So he has to have the support healing him. The support and Ursa have to do enough damage to at least one of those heroes. I mean, these are not things you have to do together. These are your options. You have a lot of options. I'm really only talking about a situation where you have a melee carry, because if you have melee supports, it sucks you can't get last hits on your support, but it's not as important. So let's talk about your options. You can go and harass the shit out of the enemy heroes. Let's say you take your Dazzle or your Shadow Shaman. Shadow Shaman's great for this if you got someone like Ursa. You get them to lock down one of those enemy heroes, and you beat the brakes off of him. And even if that hero gets away with 100 health, don't go after him. If you're gonna tower dive, if you're low leveled and you have to tower dive to get to him, let him go. Just let him go. In fact, at low levels, it's actually better, because he has to walk all the way back to his fountain, sit in front of it and let him heal, and then burn a warp scroll, or worse, walk all the way back. During that period of time, he's not getting any money or he's not getting any experience, and you have free roam over the lane because one harassing enemy hero is not going to be enough. Granted, if it's Keeper of the Light, you just have to move out of the way because that Wave of Light spell is just going to burn your ass up no matter who you are until about level 10, 11, somewhere in that area. So, those are some options. In addition, if you, let's take the Omni Knight Drow Ranger example. Let's go back to that for a minute. You have a couple of options in that sort of situation for surviving harassment, and this is, you can bounce, just roll around, back and forth, just walk around. You can stick behind your creep line. And you don't get last hits, you give up on last hits, you give them all to the other person, the range, the drow, the carry, whoever's there. And you can't do this if you're a melee carry. But in the event that you're melee and you're not a carry, and you have let's say not a hard carry, but a harder carry than you, let's say you're a support and you have a ganker next to you, let the ganker get him. Let the semi-carry get him. Let the hard carry get him. All you have to do is stay there to get experience if you're not the carry. I mean, granted, everyone loves gold. Everyone can do stuff with gold. It's universal. Everyone has a use for large amounts of gold. But, especially in pub games and especially in low-level games, but you want that carry to be as fed as he or she can be. Now, so that's your second option, which is just don't last hit, just stay in lane and make sure you get all the experience you can. That way, even if you don't get gold, you're still at the same level as everyone else on the board. Then we go on to your next option. Now, your next option is basically Talk to everyone on your team. What's going on in mid? If you're melee, it's not really viable because you probably don't want to solo mid melee. I mean, at least at the lower levels, it's not. You're gonna have a bad time. So then you look at the top and you see what they've got going on. Let's say they've got 2 ranged at the top and you've got 2 melee on the bottom. First of all, that should never be there. Switch up so that you have 1 melee and 1 ranged in each lane. You want 1 of each. It makes the dynamic more balanced. It makes it a little bit easier to do what you want to do. So talk to your team, and if you really can't get last hits and you really need last hits, perhaps it would be appropriate for you to trade lanes with someone. And whether this means sacrificing a lot of time and experience by walking or sacrificing 135 gold to warp out, if you're going to do this, the earlier you do this, the better. But just keep in mind you might need to switch. And sometimes this works out beautifully. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it helps a lot. Sometimes it will put you into a much better place. And lastly, if most of the heroes you enjoy playing are melee, or you're just always in trouble, you always find yourself getting harassed, you always find yourself with the choice of, in this hand, I've got bad, which is be really, really, really risky and maybe die, but try to stay in the lane and not get any last hits. In this hand, we've got just as bad, which is let's walk all the way back to base and then warp back out there again, or burn all my money on regen items. So, 2 bad choices. So, by switching up, you're almost cheating there. I mean, you almost are. But I digress. What I was going to say is, get a hero with a good escape mechanism. The Brood Mother is my favorite hero, I've said 100 times. And the web that makes her invisible is great because you're invisible. It also helps. It doesn't, like with the Keeper of the Light's light spell, his AoE, you still have to dodge it, but being invisible, any hero that can go invisible, any hero that can blink away, like Faceless Void or Morphling. Now, I don't recommend Morphling to a new hero because Morphling's extremely hard to play once at late game. But let's say Bounty Hunter, let's say Rikimaru after level 6, let's say Brood Mother, let's say anybody with a blink dagger. Well, not anybody with a blink dagger because you can't take damage for a couple seconds before you get blink. Anybody with a Shadow Blade, just things like that. Buy yourself an escape mechanism with a Shadow Blade, or pick a hero with a good escape mechanism so that you can survive in the lane. That's sort of like, well, I guess the Shadow Blade option is really not viable because that's a lot of money. But really, it gets to a point where you have to go, well, maybe if I'm really having a lot of trouble surviving harassment, maybe I really need to start looking into heroes that have good escape mechanisms. Maybe you need to. I'll leave it at that. So let's get on to the second portion of this video. Alright guys, now in this section of the video I'm going to talk a lot about roles. Now, I'm basically just looking at the Dota 2 wiki at the moment, and I'm literally going to go down their list of the different roles. I'm not actually going to read up what they say about them, which I will put the link to the page I'm looking at right now in this video's description, but I'm basically going to give you a short version of what each of these things are. So the first thing is lane support. Now, lane support is it's different from a support. A lane support is really important early game, and if you have one, you want to have them with your hard carry. And I'll tell you what a hard carry is in a little bit. But you want to have it with your carry. You want to have it with the person that's going to be strongest late game. And the lane support is good at keeping that hero alive, good at helping them escape in the case of the Trent Protector, because the Trent Protector can actually make them invisible, or good at giving them lots of mana, like the Keeper of the Light. So that's sort of what a lane support does. A lane support keeps you alive in the early game. So the next thing is the carry. The next role is the carry. The carry. The carry, the carry, the carry. Every team should have at least one hard carry. You want one hard carry to have a balanced team. Your hard carry is a cannon. Your hard carry is the beast you want to unleash. The hard carry is the person that, if fed enough, is the kind of, in a situation where, in a pub game where 5 people are playing that have never played the game before versus 5 people that are playing that have never played the game before, if you see one of them all kill the enemy team, it's probably their carry. The carry is the hero that benefits the most from gaining a gold advantage and a level advantage late game. It's not necessarily a level dependent hero, but specifically a strongly, and I mean strongly, gold dependent hero. All depends on the amount of gold that hero has late game. And really, if your carry gets killed a lot early game and doesn't get to farm, your whole team's in big trouble. On the other hand, if their carry doesn't get any kills and all of the kills you get go to your carry and none of your deaths go to your carry, you might actually be in a great shape even if you're a little bit behind in kills and a little bit behind in towers. Just because that carry, if it's a really hard carry, that carry can come out with just both guns blazing and just shoot down half the enemy team in a good team fight. So next on the list is a disabler. Now a disabler would include the likes of a shadow shaman, which has his shackles. He has his hex that turns you into a chicken. A good example of a disable is the sheep stick. I can't think of the real name of it, but the sheep stick that turns you into a sheep. It disables you. It makes it so you cannot cast spells or locks you down in place. And in most cases, when you're disabled, you can also take damage, so you can just get the floor mopped with you, while the enemy team just disables you, and then their hard carry comes in and blows the shit out of you. So that's if you have a hard carry and a disabler in a lane, then probably level 3, level 4, level 5, somewhere in that area, your disabler is going to try to start locking down enemy heroes, and your carry is going to try to burst all of his or her mana into that hero to kill it. For instance, shackles from the Shadow Shaman with Ursa. Ursa comes up, burns down all his cooldowns, and burns down an enemy hero, and you get back. So that's how the disabler works in team fights. Generally speaking, disablers are the stuns. Like Bane is really good at disabling people. There's one hero I think, Lion. Lion is just a big ball of stuns, especially his spikes that travel under the ground. That disables an entire group of people in a line. Earthshaker is great for disables because of his fissure. He also has that passive that makes it so whenever he uses a spell, anyone around him is stunned. So really, stuns are good for interrupting. It's good for stopping people from town porting. It's good. You have to have at least 1 or 2 solid disablers. Now, a ganker, and sometimes the ganker is the same as the semi-carry. Sometimes a ganker isn't a semi-carry, and sometimes a semi-carry is a ganker. And sometimes you have a semi-carry that's not a ganker, and sometimes you have a ganker that's not a semi-carry. But a ganker is someone that is just really, 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 really good at killing enemy heroes at different points in time during the game. A ganker is not the carry because the ganker is not someone that literally... The difference between the carry late game and the ganker early game is that the carry late game literally just goes and you right click and then boom 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 dead. Boom 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 dead. Like you just right click damage. It's all about your right click damage if you're a carry. Now a ganker, let's take the Night Stalker for example. He's one of my favorite gankers. He is so powerful at night because he does have ridiculous right click damage and because he has ridiculous movement speed, but he also has his nuke that does like 300 damage, silences you, slows you in place. Another good ganker. A ganker is sort of the same thing as a nuker, like a Crystal Maiden. A Crystal Maiden is a good ganker if the Crystal Maiden is with someone else. Like, let's say Crystal Maiden and Shadow Shaman, if they both burn down their cooldowns, you'll probably easily get a hero early game. If you have... trying to think of a couple of good gankers. The Tinker can be a good ganker just because ganker it's not exactly the same thing as, but it's close to synonymous with nuker. Ganker is someone that can just burn a lot of damage on an enemy hero really, really quickly. Almost, not universally, like I've said with Night Stalker, but generally speaking, gankers do this just by burning a lot of skills, versus carries can burn down heroes using their right click. So, next on the list is the Initiator. Your Initiators are sometimes I call usually they're tanks. Usually Initiators are tanks, but they aren't synonymous. They aren't mutually inclusive. For for instance, I'm trying to think of an initiator that's not a tank. Anyone, I guess a Pudge is a good example. He is a tank, but he doesn't do the role by tanking, like an Axe. Let's take the stereotypical way of initiating. Well, an initiator is someone that starts the team fight. He's someone that has a way to just get the ball rolling in the middle of it. When you've got 5 heroes against 5 heroes in the lane, and they're both bouncing around behind the creep wave, no one knows what to do, no one knows who to take that first move, everyone's playing really defensively. Then out of nowhere, Pudge throws his hook, grabs a hero on the enemy team, pulls him back into yours, you hear, ah, fresh meat, and then there's just pieces of the enemy hero flying all over your screen. That is an initiation. Axe runs into the group of enemy heroes, he's got nothing but the Heart of Tarrasque, maybe a Satanic, Vanguard, he's just stacked. He's just stacked with nothing but defensive items. He runs into, he's built like a tank, runs into the enemy team, uses his taunt. Everyone's attacking him now. This gives you a favorable way for the first few seconds to paint a target and to start the team fight and to kill at least 1 or 2 of the enemy heroes. That's a good way to initiate. Another good way to initiate is, let's say you have the Sand King. If Sand King has the ability, if there's no stun around, or if he can get in there, if he's confident that he can do it without getting stunned, if the Sand King has a Blink Dagger, Sand King blinks into the enemy heroes, uses his ultimate, and then you have a massive AoE damage that also has a massive stun anywhere he moves around. That's an okay way to initiate. Tidehunter, one of the best ways to initiate in a team fight, and that's really, I mean, in pro games, that's almost always good for. He can get a Blink Dagger, blink into the middle of the enemy team, uses ultimate, which is called Ravenge, and you have a massive spell, massive AoE, that does okay damage, but has a massive stun to it. And it damages everything. Everything in sight's damaged and stunned. So you can do that and then immediately snipe 1 hero, possibly 2. So an initiator is someone that's good at starting combat. Next you have the jungler. Now the jungler is someone that lives in the jungle. George of the Jungler. The junglers are good for a lot of reasons because they can get as much experience in the... They can get as much experience... A good jungler, like a Nature's Prophet, some cases an Axe, Broodmother can jungle because of her spiderlings. Junglers are junglers because of abilities that allow them to solo large amounts of neutral units, not exactly neutral because they're going to attack you, but you know what I'm saying, the creeps. They're allowed to fight large amounts of creeps by themselves because they have abilities that make other monsters, abilities that let them mind control creeps, abilities that let them heal themselves. In Axe's case, they do damage. He does more damage the more he's hit. Stuff like that. And the jungler is good because a good jungler can get as much experience as a solo mid. So, solo mid's level 5, and both of the heroes in the bottom lane are just turning level 4, and the top lane is now level 5 too, because the top lane is now a solo top, or the bottom lane is now a solo top, because one of those heroes is in the jungle. And the jungle hero is just as strong as the mid hero if he's jungling correctly, if he's jungling really well. It's hard to do it sometimes, but if you can do it well, things will go well. So you now have 3. It's like you've had 3 heroes that have each had their own lane. So it's really easy for a hero to find. Sometimes a hero will find you in the jungle. It's not that easy, but if a hero finds you in the jungle, if there's 2 heroes that find you in the jungle, you're probably going to die. So that's a little risky. You now have a suicide lane. You have a lane that only has 1 hero. That hero can get killed. It's much easier for a hero to get killed when that hero is against 2 enemy heroes. So it's a little bit more dangerous. At lower levels, it's, I guess, more dangerous than at higher levels. But in general, it's not as important as in League of Legends, I don't want to say. But it helps your team a lot because you get a good experience advantage early game. So next on the list is the roamer. Now the roamer is sort of like the opposite of the jungle. The roamer is someone that has the ability, it's someone who benefits from bouncing all around the map at all points of the game. Like the Crystal Maiden and the Earthshaker are 2 good examples of this. Crystal Maiden because she can go in and pop out in the middle of a lane. It's sort of like she's almost like she has an assigned lane. Like a roamer, for the most part, usually has an assigned lane, and just like maybe even as early as level 5, level 6, she just, for the rest of time, just bounces all around the map, intermittently sneaking in and burning someone down so that the other 2 heroes in lane can get them. So that's sort of, it's a good, Crystal Maiden's a good example of a great roamer. Another thing a roamer can do, let's still using Crystal Maiden as our example, let's say she finds a jungler who's at like half health or 2/3 health in the middle of a fight against some neutral creeps. She goes in there and burns all her cooldowns, she can probably kill him, and if she doesn't, the neutral creeps probably will. So the roamer is really good at killing a jungler. So that's just something, if the roamer can find the jungler, which you know about where they're going to be, but still it's not easy to find them all the time. And if the jungler is sticking kind of close to the lane, then you're also putting yourself at risk by attacking the jungler. So food for thought on that. Now 1.9, the tank. The tank is someone that typically lasts a long time in a team fight. This includes your Axe, your Tide Hunter, your Nature's Prophet, or not Nature's Prophet, your Trent Protector, sometimes Earthshaker, Viper. Viper can actually build himself as a tank. He's a semi-carry, he's a decent carry and a tank. So that's something to think about. Ursa a lot of the times is built like a tank. They're heroes that they have a lot of health or a lot of armor. For whatever reason, they're just really hard to kill in the middle of a fight. They're the heroes that you don't always want to target. You usually don't want to target first, because if you do, there's a chance all 5 of you will attack them. You'll almost kill that one hero, and all of you will end up dead. And then other roles, escape. Now, escape is these are roles that a lot of these roles overlap, but escape is just it means that the hero has a good escape mechanism. For the bounty hunter, it means that the hero can do that wind walk thing where he just turns invisible, runs away. With the broodmother, it means she can hide in her web, so if she's in big trouble, she can just stop moving and turn invisible. Unless she's revealed, unless there's detection somewhere, she's fine. Another good escape mechanism, Faceless Void, blink away. Morphling, kind of blink away. Stuff like that. So that's escape, pretty straightforward. Other roles, a semi-carry. Now, a semi-carry is interesting. Semi-carries oftentimes are gankers or nukers. A semi-carry is someone like a broodmother, like a Viper, like an Ursa. I guess Ursa's maybe Ursa's a hard carry. I don't know. But a semi-carry is someone that has a pretty solid role as it is, but they can be a carry. They can be almost as well. They can be powerful late game. They are a carry, but they're only a half carry. Semi-carry, side carry, same thing. Like the broodmother. The reason I love the broodmother is that the broodmother can push really, really well, but the broodmother is also a really, 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 really good late game side carry. The broodmother, in almost any one-on-one fight, unless I hit the opponent's other hard carry, like unless I pump into the enemy team's hard carry, usually as the broodmother I can kill anyone on their team in a one-on-one fight, unless it's a really bad game for me. Unless I've just been feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding. So I think that's about it for side carries. It's basically you're a character that has a pretty clear and defined role that isn't necessarily you're not a hard carry by any means, but you have the ability to be like a hard carry late game. And in public games, especially at lower levels, semi-carries are probably the most fun you're going to have. But I'll get to roles for new heroes in a minute. So, last but not least is the support. The support is the person that helps keep your team alive. You have gankers that are supports, you have initiators that are supports, you have... Basically, the only thing that you won't see a support be is a carry or a semi-carry, because your job is to help the other people on your team. Your job is to make sure the other people on your team stay alive, to make sure that the enemy is CC'd in some way, to buff your allied team during a fight, to use a team fight ultimate that disables lots of people on the enemy team, to do stuff like that. Your job as the support, and I'll start on this part of the video now, the support is probably the easiest thing for a new player to learn, because you're always going to buy the courier. Now the courier, I hope you guys know what a courier is. I know I didn't, at least until I played for a few months back in probably 2009. A courier is a little guy that you buy. It's like a little donkey, and can be upgraded to a flying version of him that will come to you on the map and drop your items off. So you don't have to leave the lane. You can use the courier to come out to you. The support is the person who should be responsible for buying the courier, and the support should also be responsible for buying wards. Now, go to dotacinema.com, or not dotacinema.com, youtube.com/dotacinema. DotAcinema is the greatest, talked about them before, they're the greatest YouTube channel for videos about Dota. For anything Dota related, for any hero, for any skill set or tactic, they are better than I could ever hope to be. But check out their website, or check out their YouTube channel, and check out their video on warding. Now, if you're a support, you need to learn how to ward, you need to learn where to put those wards, and you need to be the one who buys those wards and puts down those wards. You're also going to be the person that buys the courier, you're going to be the person that upgrades the courier. Supports usually, especially a hard support, now I don't know if that's, technically I don't know if that's a thing, but a good support is pretty level dependent. Let's say like the Omni Knight, for example, he's level dependent. He doesn't need to get those last hits. And he's going to be using his money on the courier. He's going to use his money to keep the game warded. Your job is to help other players, the ganker, the semi-carry, the carry, to help those guys run the board. You are the guy behind them who's holding them up. You're the support. You keep them going. And because you automatically know you will always be buying the wards, and you'll always be buying the courier, you know where most of your gold is going to go. You know where most of your gold is going to go before the game even begins. So that's why the support's kind of easier. Carries are, they're the most fun late game because you get to hear monster kill and ultra kill, mega kill, triple kill, all that good stuff. And you get this, you're able to make lots of kills. You're able to sort of run the board if the game goes well. But you have to get last hits all game long. You have to do well. If you fall, your team will fall. So there are carries that are easy to learn, like the Bounty Hunter, and it's always worth it to look into these different carries. It's always, I would recommend playing with some carries, but I'd probably try the Mountain Bot games first just to be sure. Because let's say the Drow Ranger, you never played the Drow Ranger before. I mean, she's I guess one of the easier hard carries to play. She's pretty straightforward, but at the same time, you still have to know what you're doing. If you mess up with the Drow Ranger, if you mess up as a carry, you're going to be the person your team blames. So, if you're new to the game, I'd recommend learning what roles heroes have and what these heroes do. But most of all, I would recommend playing with supports just to get started. Supports/disablers or support/nukers, because that way you can do damage, you can get a kill here and there, and it's easy because you know where all your money goes to, and that's to wards and a courier. That comes first. Of course, you want to start out by getting just the basic courier wards and then your regen items, but in general, you want to put all of your money into into wards and a courier. So, I think that's all I wanted to say about roles and what they do. I'll put the link to Dota Wiki's role page in this video's information. And now let's get on to the third part. I'm going to take a look at some of y'all's feedback. And I just said the word y'all. Alright guys, welcome back, and this is the last section of this extremely long episode of Don't Feed Noob. Please let me know what you think about the length of it. I realize it's probably way too long, but I'm going to put, I hope the times helped you out. So, the first comment comes from Gutsy Canuck, who says, the aspect of MOBA in general is almost impossible to be 100% balanced compared to StarCraft 2. Rather than Dota being more of an aggressive game compared to LoL, I find Dota 2 is just a little more balanced. This is the reason as to why every move you make is so crucial in Dota 2 compared to LoL. I would actually agree with this to a good degree, Mr. Canuck, but I would say that both are true. I think that League of Legends, because it's for casuals, it's not as volatile, and because Dota 2 has a much higher skill ceiling, it is much more volatile. However, considering we've been working with the same hero pool for several years now, I would say that Dota 2 is actually much more balanced than League of Legends. I don't know if we will see additional heroes after the last heroes are brought over from Dota 1. And if they are, it will be one every very long period of time. Because the people that make this game, Ice Frog himself, they are all very, very, very preoccupied with making this game as balanced as it can possibly be. The game is extremely balanced, but it is aggressive. It is aggressive and it's balanced. So I agree with you, but I do think that the game is naturally more aggressive as well. And then Boredom is Fail says, I know when you swear you're simply trying to emphasize the point, but try your best not to. Sorry about that, but sometimes I have to, because please, believe me when I say don't feed noob, people in games, they aren't saying don't feed noob. It's in all capital letters, and there are a lot of other words in that sentence too. Salad of Chaos says, I thought this was a really good video until the part where you said wards are nowhere near as important as in LoL. They're nowhere near as important in LoL as they are in Dota 2. Sorry for that statement. I have never played LoL at the very top tier of playing. I've played LoL. I maybe played 100 games of LoL, but maybe 50 games of LoL, but I've never really put in the man hours into LoL that I have into StarCraft 2 and Dota 2. So I'm sorry for that statement. I've only played it at the lower, maybe mid levels of the game. And then Agent Aargo says, cool video, thanks, keep up the good work. Also, one thing I have found, I'm a noob, is I can't deal with heavy harassed champions, keeper of the light, or anything with range, etc. I find even if you go back and heal and I get back into the lane, they have a level advantage and can harass you even more. I would like to thank you for giving me this question that I actually spent the first portion of the video talking about. So, yeah, I hoped I helped answer that question. Just try to stay back if you have to, or pick another ranged hero. In the case of the Keeper of the Light, you just gotta stay away from that AoE. So, thank you for watching. This has been another extremely long episode of Don't Feed Noob, and I'll be back next week with another episode. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback of any kind, please feel free to leave it in the comments of this video, and I'll try to get back to you or address it in next week's video. Also, every Wednesday I do a video where I address everyone's feedback in a show called The Mail Room. It's been down for a few weeks because my internet connection's been terrible, but I'm now the only person in the home that's using this connection, so even though it's terrible, I should be able to get an episode of The Mail Room to you guys, and I might actually stream a little bit. If I stream, you can find that out via my Twitter at MackTen or my YouTube feed, because I'll put a message out there. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It would mean the world to me. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.